segment, I'm going to talk with you about sexuality, sexual norms, and sexual harassment abroad. Later, there will be another segment from the Title IX office specifically about sexual harassment and policies. I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. First of all, for all of you, you will find information that's specific to your country and your destination in your student handbook. Those go out a couple weeks before you depart for your program. And there will be a whole section on sexuality, sexual norms, LGBTQ issues, and other things that relate to student sexuality and safety in the context of your country. Be prepared that gender roles and gender norms abroad can be quite different than in the United States. Small things like whether people greet one another by kissing on the cheek or by touching in some way, or where they would not do that. Differences such as whether people of the same gender would walk openly holding hands on the street, or whether that is considered to be an inappropriate public display of affection. There are a lot of different ways that norms may vary from country to country, even in countries that seem to be a great deal like our own. So just be informed about what the policies are or the practices are in the country that you will be staying in. One area that many students struggle with is in how we talk about sexuality abroad. Americans can be fairly casual. It's not unusual in the States for somebody to be having an offhand conversation and reference a sexual fling of a previous night. In the context of some cultures, that is considered to be flirtatious behavior or specifically a sexual come-on. So understand how small things like a physical gesture of giving someone a kiss on the cheek or an offhand comment may be seen differently in your country than you intend them to be, and therefore may result in a different response to your behavior. We also have in your handbook specific information and resources about LGBTQ issues, whether it is safe to be out in your country, what are safe spaces either on your university's campus or in the city that you're going to be based in, whether public displays of affection are appropriate among same-sex couples or heterosexual couples or not at all. It's important that you read that information and that you let that inform where you go to socialize, where you go to date, and so on. Be aware also abroad that there's a difference between public space and private space. That's true in the United States too, but perhaps not so much on a college campus as it is out in the wider world. So for the most part, this is a generalization, but we can say that in most countries abroad, for starters, people's homes are smaller than they are in the US, and therefore it's fairly rare to get invited into someone's home or apartment or room. The home is usually reserved for visits from family, closest, dearest friends, or a special honored guest. It's more rare in countries with smaller homes for relative strangers to be invited home for a drink or a social activity when they don't know you well. So often if someone invites you to their apartment or their room, or at least possibly, you're being invited specifically for to initiate a physical relationship. Just be aware that at least that might be an undercurrent before you accept an invitation, or understand the context of the invitation. Similarly, if you invite someone back to your room who you were just meeting, or to your host family's home who you don't know well, you may also be creating a situation that's potentially unsafe, not just in terms of the potential for sexual assault, but robbery or other kinds of things. So as a rule, when you're meeting new people, because we want you to meet new people as part of your experience abroad, we encourage you to meet in public spaces, particularly when you're first getting to know someone. Meet at the museum, meet at the movies, meet at a restaurant, meet at a club. Bring a friend or two along for your meeting until you get to know somebody better and have a clearer sense of what type of relationship that person or you are seeking, and where you're going to be safe with them. Okay. Finally, you should be aware that the definition for consent in the context of sexuality abroad may be different than it is in the States. In fact, I would say in most countries, even countries that otherwise are a lot like us, what construes consent may be different than here. In the United States, certainly on college campuses, we're very clear that a student who is alcohol or drug impaired is incapable of giving consent. That is not necessarily the case abroad. Unfortunately, in some countries, there will be an expectation that if you are conscious, whether or not you are alcohol impaired, and if you seem to have chosen to consume alcohol as opposed to somebody putting something in your drink, that you are in fact responsible for your own decision making and your own behaviors. We're telling you this not so that we can talk about legal definitions or in order to say somebody's at fault or somebody's not at fault, but because we want you to be aware of what the norms and expectations are to increase your sense of safety. Basically, we discourage you from becoming so impaired that you are not in control, aware of your own actions, aware of what other people around you are doing. And we also encourage you to just think about where you're socializing again. Are you using a buddy system? Are you with other people who can help you if somebody behaves inappropriately towards you? We want you to have a really wonderful experience, but we also want you to have a safe one.